Have you ever been warned not to answer a call, even if you hear your name? Not because it's a prank or a wrong number, but because the call itself isn't coming from someone living. I have. And I wish I'd listened. The place I'm about to tell you about isn't a legend or a story passed down from someone else. It's real. It's a building that still stands. Its walls soaked in silence and memory. And something else. Something that moves when no one is looking. I've been carrying this inside me for 11 months now. Long enough for people to forget what happened. But not me. I think about it every time the lights flicker. Every time a hospital intercom buzzes just a little too long. And every time I hear someone whisper my name in a voice I don't recognize. My name is Linda Parker. I'm 39 years old, and I've worked in elder care and institutional nursing for 17 years, mostly nights. I thought I had seen it all. Terminal agitation, post-surgical psychosis, patients caught between worlds. But nothing prepared me for what happened during my first night shift as a caretaker at Larkspur Memorial Hospital. This wasn't just a new job. It was supposed to be a reset, a break from the ICU pressure and family politics. Quiet hours, slow pace, no trauma cases. That's what the agency told me. They didn't tell me about the 5th floor. They didn't tell me about the calls after midnight. And they sure as hell didn't tell me what not to do. They just handed me a badge and a key that didn't match any labeled door. And one last instruction, whispered as I left orientation. If someone calls you after 3:17 a.m., especially if they say your name, do not answer, no matter what, not even if it sounds like someone you know. I didn't understand then, but I do now. Do you want to know what I saw on that first night? Because if I start this story, you need to be ready to hear the end of it. Larkspur Memorial was a place that looked like it had been forgotten on purpose. It sat on the edge of town, surrounded by withered oaks and a rusted iron fence. The building itself was massive, 6 stories of black brick and clouded windows with a central tower that hadn't been used since the old locals called it the Cradle, though no one could really tell me why. It had originally been a psychiatric hospital, opened in 1892, later converted into a long-term care facility for hospice and chronic mental illness patients. Most of the original architecture remained: narrow hallways, arched doorways, stairwells that seemed to twist more than they should. Inside it was cold, not temperature-wise but emotionally. It had that sterile hospital smell, ammonia and old bandage, but underneath it was something fainter, a sour, coppery smell that lingered no matter how many times the floors were mopped. My supervisor for the night was a woman named Helen, mid-50s, efficient, polite, but you could tell she didn't want to make small talk. She handed me the floor map, the med keys, and a pager that looked like it hadn't been used since the Bush administration. "You're on 5 North, she said. "Most of the patients are stable, sleepers. You'll just be doing hourly rounds and checking vitals." Then she looked at not just at me, into me. "Don't go near room 512 unless someone physically needs you there," she added. "And don't answer any calls from the intercom after 3. Just let them ring." She said it like it was part of the routine, like asking someone to wear gloves. "What if it's a patient?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Karen hesitated. "Just don't," she said. "The night staff will explain more. You'll get used to it." But no one ever really explained anything. The other caretakers were 2 young orderlies, Miguel and Jamie, both quiet, both constantly looking over their shoulders like they were waiting for something to happen. There was a nurse practitioner, who made rounds at midnight, Dr. Rausch, pale guy with a lazy eye and a whispery voice. He barely acknowledged me except to ask if I had the medcart code. "Keep it locked when you're near the west hallway," he said. "We've had incidents." I was still trying to make sense of all this. As I stepped off the elevator on 5 North, the hallway lights flickered. The floor groaned beneath my shoes. The walls were the same green as oxidized copper. 12 rooms, all empty feeling, even the ones with patients, except room 512. That door was closed, sealed with a strip of white tape across the edge like a crime scene, and someone had written in black marker, "No entry after 3:17. The rest of the shift was quiet, until the first call came. It was 12:46 a.m. when I first felt it. I just finished checking in on Mr. Halbrook in 509, a stroke patient who hadn't spoken in 3 months. I was logging vitals when the temperature dropped. Not a breeze, not a draft, an immediate drop, like someone had opened a freezer door behind me. The hallway lights flickered once, then again. When I stepped back into the corridor, I noticed my breath misting in the air. I checked the thermostat on the wall, still said 72 degrees. I told myself it was faulty, just a glitch, old wiring, no big deal. Then the call light above room 512 blinked on, just one slow, steady flash, that soft electric buzz that hospitals use to summon staff. I stared at it, froze. The tape was still across the door, still sealed, but the call light was blinking like someone inside had pressed the nurse button. I looked around, expecting someone to say something, laugh. Maybe. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I reached for my pager, just to double check. No alert, no backup requests, no patient logged in room 512, and then, the intercom buzzed. That cold, distorted crackle, a whisper of static followed by a voice. My name. Linda. Soft, wrong, like someone trying to mimic my mother's voice, but just off. I backed away. My ID badge clipped the wall and made a sound that echoed too loud. Then it stopped. Buzz, static, silence. I didn't answer. I didn't touch the intercom. The call light blinked once more, then went dark. I stood there for what felt like 5 minutes, just staring at that door, waiting to see if something, anything, would move behind the reinforced glass. It didn't, but the hallway never warmed back up. By 2:15 a.m., I couldn't shake the feeling. I'd done my rounds twice. Everything seemed fine, too fine. The kind of calm that felt staged. Every patient was either asleep or pretending to be. But 5 North. It watched me. That's the only way I can describe it. So I started poking around carefully. Not snooping, just observing. First, the patient log. There was no record of anyone ever being assigned to room 512. In fact, the line for that room was completely redacted, blacked out in permanent marker. But the format of the logs implied there had been something there once, something they didn't want new hires to see. I went to the supply closet and found a clipboard labeled Incident Archive, Restricted. The folder was half empty, but tucked behind a stack of outdated fall risk policies was a single page. It was yellowed and water damaged, but I could still read the note. 512. Do not assign patient. Maintenance reports unresolved anomalies. Requests for removal denied by administration. Last recorded entry, A. Sorensen. June 5. That name stuck with me. I typed it into the old computer at the nurse's station. No digital record. But when I searched the paper files in the back room, I found a single ID badge. Faded, cracked down the center. Alexandra Sorensen, night supervisor. There was no termination notice. No resignation letter. Just disappearance. The air around me felt tighter the deeper I dug. Like the hospital itself knew I was asking questions. It didn't want answered. I tried to ask Miguel about it during our overlap near the med fridge. He went pale, shook his head. Don't ask, he muttered. They always disappear after the 3rd night. Then he walked away. I didn't know what he meant, but I would soon. By 2:45 a.m., I couldn't help myself. I should have just finished my shift and left the questions alone. But something had sunk its hooks into me. The call light, the intercom, the sudden drop in temperature, and a nurse who vanished without a trace. 20 years ago. I waited until the hallway was empty, and walked back toward room 512. The tape across the door was still intact. The black marker scrawl faded but unmistakable. I leaned closer. Nothing. No sound. No buzz. No light. But the moment my fingers brushed the handle, I felt it. Pressure. Like something heavy and ancient was pressing back from the other side. Not a person. Not an object. Something. Aware. I stepped back fast. Heart pounding in my throat. That's when I noticed the air vent above the door was slightly open. Inside, tucked into the metal slats, was something small. I pulled it free. A photograph. Old. Curled at the edges. Faded to sepia. It showed a woman in a nurse's uniform. Maybe standing beside a patient bed in what looked like room 512. Same window. Same tile. On the back, in careful cursive, Helen. 3:17 a.m. She finally answered. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew who might. Janie was doing charting at the nurse's desk when I found her. I didn't show her the photo. I just asked her one question. Who was Helen? She didn't answer at first. Then slowly, she turned to me and said, she was the first. The first what? The first to answer. When the call came, they used to have actual bells, before the intercoms. Room 512 would ring all night, and Helen went in. And Janie met my eyes. She never came out. After that I couldn't sleep. Not even during my off hours. I kept thinking about Helen, about the photo, about the name, Sorensen, and what it meant that her record was erased. It didn't feel like urban legend. It felt like deliberate omission, the kind that stains everything it touches. The next night, I came in early. Karen wasn't there. No one was. The lobby was quieter than usual, too quiet. Even the security guard looked like he was avoiding eye contact. When I reached the 5th floor, the elevator doors opened before I even pressed the button. And in the center of the hallway was a janitor's cart. No janitor, just the cart, sitting there, alone. The mop was soaked, the bucket full of dark water, and perched right on top, wrapped in a plastic evidence sleeve, was a set of patient ID stickers. Each one had been printed in the last 2 days. Each one bore the same name, Helen, but with different last names. Helen Bishop, Helen Deeks, Helen. All the patients I'd seen were male, stable. The census didn't show any Helens on file. When I brought this to Dr. Rausch during his midnight rounds, he just stared at the stickers for a long moment. Then quietly he said, "They're not new, they're He handed the stickers back like they were toxic. "I've been here 16 years, and every few months, she shows up again. Different last name, different history, same first name, same room, room 512. I asked. He nodded. "She doesn't exist in the system, never does. But we always find her tags, her wristbands, her chart sometimes. Then something happens, a call light, a voice, a mistake, and what happens if someone answers?" Rausch took a deep breath. "They don't come back." I made it to the 4th hour of that shift before something. It started with the monitors. All at once, every screen on 5 North flickered and rebooted. Vitals vanished. Patient charts reset to blank. Then the power surged. The overhead lights dimmed and the emergency backups kicked in, casting everything in a sickly amber glow. And room, its doors still taped shut, was pulsing. Not open, not moving, just humming. The glass in the door vibrated with a sound I couldn't quite hear but felt inside my chest. Then the intercom crackled. "Linda, please." The voice was fragile, terrifying, and for a second, just a second, I thought it was my sister's voice. The same tone she used to use when she was a kid, when the nightmares were bad. But my sister lives 3 states away. The call repeated, softer now. "Linda, don't leave me." I grabbed my radio, called down to the front desk. Silence. Then the intercom buzzed again. "Please, let me out." That did it. I ran. I didn't stop at the nurse's station or the elevators. I took the stairs, 2 at a time, until I reached the 2nd floor where the night supervisor's office was. But when I got there, the door was wide open, empty. The screen on the desk was glowing, a live camera feed. I leaned in. It was room 5, and on the monitor was a woman in a hospital gown, curled in the far corner, shaking, rocking, mouthing something over and over again. I couldn't hear the audio, but I knew what she was saying. 317. 317. I knew then that this wasn't just about the room, it was about her. I needed to know who Helen was, not just the patient, or the echo, or whatever she had become, but the original, the woman in the photo, the one who answered first. So I went digging. The basement archive was locked, but the older security guard Earl owed me a favor after I caught him sleeping during his shift last week. He unlocked the records room and left me alone. Inside it smelled like mold and yellowed paper. Filing cabinets lined the walls like coffins standing on end. I scanned for incident logs, and found the earliest ones going back to 1947. That's when I saw it. June 5, 1951. Helen Garrow, age 32. Nurse, assigned to Night Ward 5. Reported missing after failing to clock out. Search conducted. No signs of forced entry or exit. One note added to the file a week later in pen. Last seen responding to an unregistered call light from room 5. Door was found ajar. Room empty. No patient assigned. I turned the page. Attached was a black and white photo. Same one I'd found in the vent, except this one wasn't faded. And this time, I could see what Helen had been looking at in the picture. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't posing. She was staring at something behind the photographer. Her face frozen in horror. Mouth half open. Eyes raw. There was no further entry about her. No obituary. No funeral notice. Just gone. Until now. I confronted Karen the next evening before shift change. She was at her locker, pulling on her coat, her face unreadable in the harsh fluorescent lighting. I held up the photo. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" Karen didn't even blink. "Because no one listens. Because they always ask on the 2nd night, and they never make it to the 4th. You knew what room 512 was. You knew about Helen." She took a long breath, then turned to face me. "When I started here in 96, I asked the same questions. I looked into the records. I found the photo. I heard the voice. We all do. Some of us stop asking. Some leave. Some disappear." Her voice shook just barely. 512 was never built for care. It was a holding room for the unrecoverable, the violent, the forgotten, the possessed, if you believe in that sort of thing. I frowned. Possessed. Karen shook her head. Whatever was in that room, it latched onto her. Helen. She answered something that was never meant to speak. Now it's using her name over and over, recycling it. Why? She finally looked me in the eye. "Because if it says your name just right, if it knows you, you'll go in too." That night, as Karen left, she paused by the elevator and said one more thing over her shoulder. "You've heard it, haven't you? Don't pretend you haven't." I didn't answer, because I had. I thought I had it figured out. That Helen was some poor nurse, the first to vanish. That room 512 was cursed because of what happened to her. that maybe, just maybe, if I understood her story, I could stop it. So I did something reckless. I brought a voice recorder, not the kind they use for notes or patient care. This was personal. I kept it tucked in my jacket pocket and hit record the moment my shift began. The hallway was quiet that night. No call lights, no flicker, just the hum of the old ventilation system and the occasional mechanical sigh of the oxygen pumps. At 3:00 a.m. I stood outside room 512 and pressed the recorder against the door. For a moment, nothing. Then, tap, tap, soft, measured, like fingers against glass. I played it back, but the tapping wasn't on the recording. Instead, the playback gave me something else entirely. A voice, not mine, not Helen's. A man's voice. She never left. I rewound, played it again. Same thing. She never left. It didn't match anything I'd heard before. Not the voice on the intercom. Not Dr. Rausch. Not the old security tapes. It was deeper, familiar in a way I couldn't place. I thought I'd uncovered the secret, that maybe someone else was involved. Another staff member who'd gone missing. Another patient maybe. But when I showed the recording to Janie, her reaction chilled me. She went pale, backed away and said, "That's not a voice from inside the hospital." "What do you mean?" she whispered. "That's the voice from under it." That word haunted me. It unlocked something I hadn't considered before. Larkspur Memorial wasn't just old, it was layered, rebuilt, patched together over generations, and beneath it all was a foundation that hadn't been touched in decades. I needed access to the sublevels, the old record storage, the sealed maintenance tunnels, the original morgue. According to the building blueprints I found in a forgotten drawer at the nurse's station, there was a crawl space beneath Ward 5 that had been sealed in a forgotten wing, hidden underneath room 512. At 4:12 a.m., I found the access panel in the utility room across from 5. It was rusted shut, but after a little prying with a wrench, it opened with a wheeze. Inside, darkness, and a ladder. The air was damp and heavy. It smelled like earth and copper, and old medicine. I descended slowly, flashlight in one hand, recorder in the other. At the bottom, I found a narrow hallway of rotting tiles and water-stained walls, pipes stripped from the ceiling. In the distance I saw a door, unmarked, slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was small, maybe 10 feet across, no beds, just one old examination chair in the center, facing the corner, and on the wall scratched into the plaster, over and over. Answered at 3:17, dozens of times, in different hands, some large, some small, some shaking. And on the floor, near the chair, was a metal tag. I picked it up. A. Sorensen, night supervisor. I'd found her, or what was left. That was when my recorder picked up something new. Not a voice, not a sound, a heartbeat, steady, inhuman, right behind me. I turned, I don't know what, a rat, a shadow, an old piece of machinery sputtering back to life. But the room was empty. Only the heartbeat remained louder now, vibrating in the floor beneath my feet. I backed away, flashlight shaking, the beam stuttering across cracked walls and half-buried storage boxes. That's when I saw it tucked behind a loose panel of wallboard, half hidden beneath a collapsed shelf, a file folder, black, unlabeled. Inside, photocopies of patient forms, some dating back to the 60s, but none of them were complete. The names had all been redacted, except for one, Helen Garrow, but this time she wasn't listed as a nurse. She was listed as a patient, admitted in 1950. Diagnosis: persistent delusion, auditory hallucinations, fixation on room 5. My hands went cold. She hadn't answered a call from that room. She had come from it. I flipped the page and found another name scrawled at the bottom. Dr. F. Rausch. Same name, same spelling, but the date, April 1951. The current, Rausch couldn't be more than 6. This would make him a child at the time. Unless he was lying. Unless he wasn't who he said he was. Unless the Rausch on staff now was just another mask, another part of the cycle. That's when the light flickered out completely, and the intercom, from nowhere, echoed in that underground space. "It's almost 3:17, Linda. Will you answer this time?" I ran, climbed the ladder 2 rungs at a time, the darkness clinging to my back like breath on glass. My hands were slick, trembling, scraping against metal. By the time I reached the 5th floor again, it was 3:14 a.m. The hallway was waiting. Every door was closed. The lights buzzed low. The tape on room 512 was gone. The door stood open. No call light, no intercom buzz, just silence, and the terrible pull of inevitability. I should have called someone, should have run, but something else took over. I stepped into room 512. It was colder than before, not just in temperature, but in feeling, like the room itself had died and never been buried. The bed was neatly made, nothing out of place.
except the far wall. It was wet, dark, like something had seeped through from the other side. Then the lights went out, total black. I turned, stumbling toward the door, but it wasn't there anymore. The room was different now, longer, wider, stretching out like a corridor made of smoke and memories. And at the far end, her Helen, still wearing that 1950s nurse uniform, face half hidden in shadow, her eyes glinted like glass marbles empty, watching. She raised one hand, pointed to the space behind me. I turned, the bed was gone, and in its place was the examination chair from the sublevel, the same one I had seen earlier, and strapped into it, barely breathing, was me. Same uniform, same face, eyes darting wildly behind closed lids, frozen in a silent scream. The Helen, at the far end whispered, not with her mouth, but through the very air around me, "This is what happens when you answer. You don't leave, you divide, you become." Echo. I dropped to my knees, trying to wake myself to break whatever spell I was under. But the truth hit harder than any nightmare. I wasn't trapped inside a dream, I was trapped inside her memory, or worse, my future. 3:17 a.m. flashed across the digital clock, embedded in the wall, and the last thing I heard was the sound of the intercom crackling to life, followed by my own voice, whispering, "Don't answer, don't answer, it's already too late." When I woke up, I was in room 510. Janie and Miguel were standing over me, their faces pale, their voices muffled like they were speaking through water. I had passed out, they said. A drop in blood pressure, stress, fatigue. That's what they wrote in the report, but I know better. They found me curled in front of room 512's door, closed, sealed again, the black tape perfectly intact. No one else had gone in, no one else heard a thing, and the photo, the folder, the file, gone. I left Larkspur Memorial the next day, told them I was transferring, told myself I needed a break. But the truth is, I can't be near hospitals anymore, not because I'm afraid of death, because I'm afraid of the echoes it leaves behind. You see, I've started hearing things. At first it was in dreams, my name, spoken softly at 3:17 a.m. Then it started happening, when I was awake, a pager beeping in my apartment, a call light blinking on a wall that isn't there, and sometimes, just sometimes, when I walk past a mirror, I don't see myself, not entirely. I see her, Helen, and behind her, someone strapped to a chair, someone who looks just like me. I think I brought something back with me, or maybe I never really left that room at all. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't leave, we just fade, into the walls, into the whisper, into the system. There are still people working nights at Larkspur, still nurses walking past room 512, pretending not to hear the intercom buzz, but someone always does, and when they do,